So there's this funny study that people take polygraph tests. They did for the theist and the atheist, and they ask questions like all these horrible questions. Would you like your mom to have? Would 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 you want God to have your mom to have cancer? Would you want God to do something terrible to your family members? And they think because of that horrible reaction, the needle jump, that's proof of God. See, the thing is, ever since we were born and grew up, everybody's, the Bible's always been around, right? And religion has always been around. And, whether you grew up in church or not, or you've heard people say there's a God, or things we can explain way back then, stuff, there's a God. Because it's unknown. But we've come so far now, universe out of nothing. But it's just all those years, whether it's indoctrination or all those years of the unknown, that you learned that there was always a God. Um, that doesn't mean atheists know there's a God. That test still doesn't prove anything. That test just means it's a gut reaction. If whether you're indoctrinated with religion or belief there's gods out there, um, and up to now, it's like, for instance, like my father, he had a bad experience, drowning and in the ocean, and he wouldn't take showers to, even though this was like 50 years ago. It was just like a gut reaction, a feeling of of terrifying, of drowning. And that's just, some people break out of it, and some people just don't. It still doesn't mean the atheists, um, that test doesn't mean that all atheists even know there's a God. The bottom line is, the atheist or agnostic atheist, it's don't believe there's a God because there's no proof there's a God. There's different versions of these. There's a Gnostic atheist, means I know there's no God. But then there's agnostic atheists, which probably majority of people are, means we don't believe there's a God because there's no evidence for a God. That's a difference. Now, if you would have took, if and you would find out, ask these people, if these are Gnostic atheists or agnostic atheists, then the test for the Gnostic atheists, they probably would have no threat at all. Um, because in their mind, they're convinced there's no God no matter what. Just like a Gnostic theist means they're convinced there's a God. So that test doesn't prove anything. Because there's different versions of atheists. There's Gnostic atheists, knowing there's no God, and there's agnostic atheists, do not believe there's a God because there's no evidence for a God. So there you go. If I was gonna take that test, I probably, I mean, because I mean, I would say I'm an agnostic atheist. Um, I, even though, I really don't believe there's a God. I'm not scared of hell and anything, but I'm still agnostic. I just can't say I'm a Gnostic atheist, saying there's absolutely no proof of God, even though I say in my mind. And I probably would be scared too, I wouldn't want God to hurt my mom, and I'm sure nobody would want God to hurt their kids. Um, that doesn't mean um, um, that, atheists know there's a God. It's different atheists. It's just like the tribe, the Perina tribe, they grew up knowing there's no God at all. They're actually atheist tribe. So it's, and in that sense, if they took that test, they'd be like, what's a God? They don't even know what the God is. I mean, we're talking about these people that live like ancient people, like cavemen. They, even more, even more. They live worse. I mean, they live like older than anything, older than like Amish. We're talking about just primitive people. They still today live in a world where no technology, no electricity, just out in the wild, in whatever teepees and hunting and just like they would live 3,000 years ago. Hunting or actually even more. We're talking like Stone Age. And this tribe has no idea of the God. You know, um, so if they took that test just like a Gnostic atheist, it wouldn't affect them at all because they were like, "What's a God?" They don't even know what it is. Or a Gnostic atheist would be like, "I know there's no God no matter what." So you can say, "God this, God this, God's gonna harm, God's gonna harm my parents," and they would have no feeling because in their mind they know it's not their God. Of course, we don't want, it's a it's a it's a it's a it's a it's a test to you know see, as long as this religion and God's concept's going to be around, there's always going to be some way for theists to be creative. Whether it's how do you know anything, you can't explain the Big Bang. There's always going to be something around, and until we advance further in science, we can explain even more. Of course, that'll decrease, and then eventually it'll be religion will be gone. But they're always going to find some creative way, that and as soon as it decreases less and less, it's not going to happen overnight. It might happen in a couple of years, it's not going to be right away, but as soon as technology advances, explain things more about the brain, more even about the universe and multiverses. Like I said, the gap's going to get smaller. They'll still find creative ways to even ask atheists, but it'll be harder because when science explains so much more, the theists will just can't come up with anything else, and then eventually find out that there really was no God.